Hi everyone, so we're here at the Edgewater Bar Campground at Derby Reach Regional Park in Langley, BC, and we're just here for one night.
We were here actually a year ago, almost exactly, and we'll put a link to that video if you're interested. It was a fun trip. Yesterday was National Banana Cream Pie Day, as I recall.
Fortunately, we didn't have any.
We didn't celebrate that. But we thought we'd come out, spend one night here on the river, and just enjoy early spring. I guess we're in meteorological spring now, since we're in early March. And we wanted to just get out and get some camping in.
Yeah, so in this video we're going to, because it's been 3 years now since we've bought our Roadtrek Zion Campervan, and we were brand new newbies, and now it's been 3 years.
Still so are.
Yeah, and we've learned a few lessons along the way, so we wanted to share that with you. And we also wanted to share with you some clips of recent hike and Gordon's paddle. So we hope you enjoy this video.
As Mickey noted, we're at Derby Reach and right on the Fraser River, which you can probably see behind us. It's a beautiful spot. When we came in yesterday, we had some nice mountain scenery, and what's really interesting and what I really enjoy about being here is it is the Fraser, so it's a working river. And so during the day when we saw tugboats going up the river, we've seen trains across the river. It can be loud here at night because the trains continue on through the evening. And during the day you can hear some of the road traffic, but it was really fun to watch the boats go up the river. And then there was a tugboat, and it was taking a log boom, and I'd never actually seen that happen on the river before, so that was kind of fun to watch, and we filmed that and we'll share that with you.
Regarding the lessons that we learned in the last 3 years, I think we can divide that up into a couple of categories.
Yeah.
The first one, major one, is dealing with some of the issues with maintenance and the dealership. So Gordon will talk about that.
More the RV industry as we've experienced it.
Yeah, and then the second main category we wanted to talk about was just some of the myths maybe, or impressions that people may have about RVing that are new to RVing. You see a lot of footage in movies and commercials and things like that, and so there's some things that are realistic and some things that aren't quite realistic, so we will discuss those points as well.
At least from our experience.
And then thirdly, we're going to share some footage again in a video montage at the end of the video.
Some scenes from a paddle I did recently, and then we had our 1 week of winter here a few weeks ago where we actually had below freezing weather and had a little bit of snow, and that resulted in some of the local streams and creeks freezing up, and so we did a hike about a week after that up to an area called Swan Falls that we thought we'd share with you. Okay, so I wanted to just share a little bit of the learnings that we've had working with the RV industry as owners. A couple things surprised me. It's not like buying a car. When you need to get work done, what we've found is a window for booking is usually 4 to 5 weeks, and that doesn't appear to just be us. Other RV owners, they have a similar experience. In the case of the van, we've had to take it into the Dodge dealership. I've been able to phone at 11 o'clock in the morning, and in one case get an appointment at noon, or I phoned at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. In another, I was able to get an appointment the next morning. Pretty much throughout our RV ownership, we've had to make 4 to 5 week bookings to get any kind of work done. The second thing I would suggest that if you are looking at an RV, or particularly if you're looking at a Class B van, make sure the RV dealership does sell a large number of them and they're very familiar with doing the work. That will save you some time and trouble. I think in many cases Class B vans are a very small level of sales for any kind of an RV dealership. Instead they sell trailers and maybe truck campers, and the more they're familiar with the Class B, I think the better it will be in the long run. In our case, Roadtrek is very good at reaching out to help dealers do any work, but I'm not sure that is always the case across the industry. The other thing too that I wanted to reference, and this is more around customer service focus, when we were looking at getting some of the more recent work done, I reached out to actually 6 either RV dealers or RV repair centers to ask about the the work and if they would be something that they've done in the past, and if this would be something they were interested in. We were just looking at maybe seeing if doing some work in a different dealer. And what I was really surprised at was the lack of response from the industry. So I think I sent out 6 emails. One Roadtrek dealer got back to me and said they weren't interested in doing the work. They were busy enough, kind of thing. I sent an email to 2 RV dealerships in the Abbotsford area. Nobody responded. I sent an email to 2 RV service centers that they just do repair work. Nobody responded. And I think I had one other vendor who contacted me that said that they were really unfamiliar with the work and would suggest that I go somewhere else. They didn't want to do the work if they weren't going to be able to do a good job, and I appreciated that. But it's quite different, again, compared to the automobile industry, where you could probably take your vehicle to any dealership and they'd be able to do the work. So a bit of a learning for us. I think that the takeaway would be recommend that if you're buying, make sure your dealer is very familiar with the product they're selling, and ideally they're pretty close to where you live. That would probably serve you in the long term.
The second part of our lessons learned, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the myths about RV travel, and also just some current situation related to COVID and the changes in the industry and what's happening with travel. So first of all, we did get an update from BC Parks, and starting March 8th this year, they are accepting reservations, but they're only accepting reservations from BC residents. And for camping, you can do that online. I think there's also a call number that you can phone. And they're doing a 2-month rolling period. So if you're booking on March 8th, then you're able to book only up until May 8th. So that's kind of the way it's working this year. And that's because of COVID again.
And that 2-month rolling window will continue throughout the season, I believe.
That's right, yeah.
Subject to any COVID travel restrictions that may still exist, non-BC residents can start booking reservations as of July 8th, if I recall.
Yeah, currently right now they're still encouraging BC residents to stay local. And we do have some parks opening sort of mid-March. A lot of the parks in southern BC will start to open.
Yeah, March and April.
Yeah, and in Vancouver Island, a lot of the southern Vancouver Island parks are already open. They've been open all year. When we first got our RV, we had a certain idea of what RV travel might look like, and a lot of it was based on impressions we saw in movies and in commercials, where people would just kind of drive up to a lake, park right next to a lake, or maybe drive up into the mountains and be surrounded by mountains and just basically boondock there. It appeared that you could do that anytime. And of course the reality isn't quite like that.
At least in a more urban-centered part of the province.
Yeah.
Certainly there'd be those examples if you're in parts of northern British Columbia where, yeah, those opportunities exist. At least in our experience in traveling through most of southern BC and Alberta, yeah, there just isn't that kind of opportunity unless you're prepared to sort of, be stealth camping in the middle of a city. It just isn't really as easy an accessible option.
Yeah, there's a lot more restrictions than we actually expected. You're not allowed to park on the side of the highway, for example, and just stay the night. There are certain...
Not that you want to anyway.
Yeah. There are certain highway rest stops that you can stop, and they do allow you to stay for a certain period of time. I think a maximum of 8 hours.
Yeah,
or
some
something.
they don't say no camping, but they say you're limited to 8 hours, so they're trying to restrict you from that.
And there are public lands in southern BC that you probably could boondock, but they're limited, and also they're limited in terms of access. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the type of RV you have as well, because it really depends on what you have to be able to access some of the more remote areas, which involve, driving up steep logging roads with lots of rocks and potholes and water bars, and not every vehicle
which our van
can
is
make
not
it.
particularly good at.
The type of camping that we've been doing is we've been staying at provincial parks, and I think BC is wonderful for that because there are a lot of beautiful provincial parks that you can stay at. And the only restriction is that a lot of them are reservations only, which means that with the popularity of camping, a lot of the popular parks, especially the ones that you can camp right on the water, on the lake or something like that.
You need to have reservations.
You do. You have to have a reservation, and sometimes it's really hard to get a reservation because you might log online on the first day of the reservable period, and it's already full.
We've had several examples where we've signed on at either a provincial park or a national park. And Mickey's she's been in the first 2 minutes at 7 o'clock in the morning. And already it's very difficult to find any popular weekends. It's just booked up. We've been able to get sites, but only when we've been able to choose non-popular times, or maybe we've had to stay a shorter period than we'd originally intended. We'd prefer not to plan too far ahead. And kind of take us where the weather suggests we should go. And we've been successful at times, but we're always very careful if we are going to go anywhere where we anticipate it's going to be very busy. So a national park or some BC provincial parks that everyone knows their name, then we have to make reservations.
And a lot of the time, some of the best camping spots were found for us just by chance. So we never actually really scheduled them, and we just took our chances. But of course, you've got a little bit of the nervousness too as to whether you're going to be able to find a spot for the night. So you have to. That's kind of the trade-off if you don't have a reservation. But quite often, when we plan trips months in advance, a lot of the time it doesn't quite work out for us. And I think it's the nature of traveling on the road is you have a lot of factors that come into play. So one of the main factors is weather, and some of the mountains are beautiful, but they can get very cold even in midsummer. So even in August, the overnight lows could go down below freezing, and of course then you have to worry about some of your systems, whether the water lines will freeze or your tanks will freeze, and so there's a lot of considerations. And we have had a couple of instances where we planned to go someplace, we booked a campsite there, and then we just couldn't make the reservation.
Yeah, for example, we had one with I think we were sometime in September, and we'd planned on going, or maybe late August, and we'd planned on going up to the Jasper area, and the weather changed, and they had like 4 days of well below freezing weather, and we just really didn't want to go in that case, so we just kind of shifted our direction. Now, if we'd been staying in a hotel, we probably would have gone anyway. There's just other things that will change your travel that would not normally have probably impacted you if you're traveling in something else other than an RV.
Yeah, and there's some wonderful experiences to be had when you have an RV, but also you have to have realistic expectations as to what you're actually going to get. This leads to the choice of RV that you want to make when you are a newbie. It's really important to consider what kind of camping you really want to do. Whether you are happy to just go and stay at provincial parks or private campgrounds, commercial campgrounds.
You want to be realistic in terms of what you're looking for. If you're looking for, that opportunity to be a much more remote area, you probably do want maybe a four-wheel drive pickup with a pop-up camper. One of our friends, Henry Wang, who also has a YouTube channel, he has a camper and a four-wheel drive truck, and he has certainly more accessibility to areas than we would do. So just be realistic when you're looking at your RV and where you can and where you can't go. We've gone to a number of great places and have never had a problem, but we're always, very cautious, and probably the most extreme that we would drive on is a logging road that's relatively bumpy, nothing much more than that. So just be aware of that. So if you followed our channel, you know that we've considered potentially our next RV might be something different. We've looked at everything from a very small trailer like an armadillo backpack,
where you can leave your travel trailer at the campground, and then you can take off with a four-wheel drive vehicle and go to some of the more remote places to hike. Yeah.
To something like a four-wheel drive truck and a camper on that. Probably that would provide the most flexibility.
And then we've also talked about something a little bit bigger, maybe a Class B plus or a small Class C, where there's a lot more room inside. And a van is very small, and even with two people, it can be pretty crowded. And you're typically doing a lot of your living outside instead of inside. And, we've talked about maybe it would be nice to have a little bit more space for us, and that might involve a slightly bigger vehicle, motorhome maybe. So back to the situation with COVID and what's been happening and the changes in RV travel. And I think this is really important too, because 3 years ago when we first started RVing, things were very different, and things have really changed a lot.
So just in the time that we've had our van, it's been interesting in terms of just the demand for people going outdoors and camping. The first year that we had our van, we found that we didn't really have any issue in being able to go just about anywhere if we were not in the main season. So before July and after August, we had a lot of accessibility without, and even then during the main months, unless we were going to a very busy, well-known park, we could pretty well find a spot to get into. But in the last, I guess 2 years, and particularly last year, we've noticed that even off-season is very busy, and even some of the parks that were probably not as popular have become very popular.
If things get back to normal in the world, people may go back to the habits that they had before, maybe
shopping on weekends.
Yeah, and international travel. But I think a lot of the people may have discovered something new. Is that I think during the pandemic, we really felt like it was important to be in nature, and it was good for our mental health. And I don't think that people will get away from that. I think people will continue to enjoy the outdoors.
You know, given the current demand and the sales in the RV industry last year, and from what we can see this year as well, we think that's going to continue to grow. So it's going to be just that much more challenging to find, you know, parks or rec sites. And we've had examples of individuals who've gone to what would normally be fairly remote locations, somewhat off season, and they've let us know when they've come back that, you know, it was Wednesday, raining in the middle of a week in September, and this remote location was actually full of other people. So, you know, it's definitely getting to be more of a demand, and they're not adding, at least here, they're not adding that many new campsites.
What we learned was avoid the weekends as much as possible.
If you can.
If you can, take time off during the week, in the middle of the week. One day that's great is Sunday. You leave your home on Sunday to start traveling, then you'll be able to find camping spots because everybody else is packing up and leaving that day. So we hope you found some of this useful. Our lessons learned from 3 years owning a Roadtrek Zion Campervan.
So we thought we'd close the video with a couple of clips from the trip that we did here yesterday, and our walk up the river, and just some of the beautiful scenery. It was just really pretty. And also a paddle that I did just a couple of days ago up to an area, some dykes near Pitt Lake. And then finally, with a short trip, we did up to Swan Falls. Try crossing the dike and see if there's a better water path on the other side. Okay, another waterway. You can see it's flowing reasonably fast, which is because the tide's going out. Low tide is in about 3 hours, so I thought I'd risk it. So I think I'm going to move to another area, comes off one of the rivers, and try a paddle there. So gorgeous here. And I apologize for the airplanes. People taking flying lessons. So this will be another trip when the tide tables work in my favor. Anyway, gorgeous. Pitt Lake's that way. There's some bodies of water open this way. And the airport that guy's flying from is kind of behind me right now. Okay, back to the car. I think I'm just going to walk it. I could paddle, but I think it's easier just to roll the boat up and walk up here on the dike. Okay, this looks a little easier. Only about a 5-minute drive. I might recognize the same mountains over there from where I was. That little channel right ahead of me is clear there, but actually full of ice farther on. Just look for a spot I can get in relatively easily. You can still see the flow of the current because the tide's going out. A little bit of the ice. That's the direction the current's going. However, I'm going to try going up this way. Current's quite light here, and I haven't really explored this way, so hoping it'll be an enjoyable morning. More airplanes. So this would be interesting to explore again if the tide tables were in my favor. But it's going to get too shallow. Ice on the side of the creek bed here. By the way, before we closed the video, we were just laughing because there's just been constant different noises, whether it's an airplane flying by or suddenly they're doing some construction across the river or just geese suddenly making a bunch of noise.
Yeah, or somebody's turning on their generator.
Yeah, it's been more of a challenging start to to our morning that way.
So hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please be sure to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel, Hike and RV, if you haven't done so already. And we'll see you next time.
Till next time. So we also thought, I don't like to, we thought we'd close out the video just sharing.
Sorry. Okay.
Oh, there's cows now. This could be good for bloopers.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.